So I recently finished Sakura Quest, about 2 weeks ago in fact, and I've just been thinking about how I feel about the show. There were a lot of things that I like about it, but it also has its fair share of flaws. And I just wanted to express some of my feelings about the show to you guys and, make a bit of a discussion with you all. So, ranking wise, I would say the show's probably a strong 7.5 out of 10. Ranking it with other PA Works' other shows, I would say it's worse than Shirobako and Hanasaku Iroha, about even, maybe a little bit worse than Nagi no Asukara, and definitely better than Tari Tari, and of course definitely better than Charlotte. I don't think that even needs to be mentioned. With regards to the stuff that I like about the show, I really like our main cast. Koharu, her feeling of just getting out of college and not being able to find a job, but she doesn't want to just return to a normal life. She wants to be unique. She wants to be special. That's a very relatable feeling, I think, and definitely something that a lot of people desire. Nobody wants to be mundane, even though really everyone's unique. There's not really a true concept of normal, even though we think of it so often. I personally believe. That's the sort of message that this show tries to convey, where what's unique about it is how you do your job. It's what you bring to your job. It's not what you do. You shouldn't be defined by what you do. What you do should be defined by you, which is a really strong message, I think, and one that is pretty important, especially for the younger generation who are all looking, they want to do the cool thing. And this show is trying to present this message of you don't have to have this amazing, super cool job to find fulfillment in life. You can find fulfillment, just, working a day job. Maybe you really do your best at that job and you love the people you work with and you love the town you live in. That's a perfectly fine way to live. And I appreciate the show, showing that is okay and that's fine. And you can be happy doing that. In fact, it seems like the characters who have the most highest of goals often end up being the most disappointed. For instance, Maki, she wanted to be an actor but was unfortunately not successful, and only when she finds a way to take her love for acting and apply it to her life in this town is it that she really starts to become more chipper and joyful. One of my issues, unfortunately, with the show is that we don't go as in-depth into each character as I would have liked. We sort of get this surface-level perception of each individual character, and there is a lot of room to these characters. There's a lot of backstory. There's a very heavy layer to all their interactions, and it feels like there's so much story that could have been told, but because the show moves at such a very slow and precise pace, we don't see very much of it. Especially we have Sanae. She's sort of abandoned the city lifestyle because she felt like anybody could do her job. And so she and Koharu sort of share a similar arc in coming to the realization that you don't have to be unique. Your job doesn't have to be unique, even though ultimately Koharu's job does end up becoming a very unique one. She finds something that she's passionate about. But what I take issue with is that we don't really see so much of this. We see the after effects of all these elements, so it's all present, but I really would have liked to see a little bit more of the characters' backstories leading up to this. Most of it is relegated to little side comments and a very occasional brief backstory moment, or in some cases, the people that the characters know relating some stuff about them, which is a really nice way to give exposition because it feels very natural. It feels like you're just watching the events unfold and getting to know the characters as a result of it. But the issue is that the show moves too slow. There's not enough of it being dispersed fast enough. When the show's good, it's really, really amazing, but there's a lot of times where the show is focusing on characters that I don't care about and that are just kind of bizarre, like that they're in the show. Generally, the arcs pertaining to the town itself is really the least interesting part. I wasn't too sold on the fact that this town really deserved any tourism. Even later on in the series, as they're trying to make developments to bring new people in and show people what's so great about this city, I myself wasn't very convinced. I was more interested in seeing the arc of the characters in the show, but the actual arc of the town itself, if we view the town as sort of this character, because it kind of is a character in itself, the entire town and all the people in it, that arc I was not too concerned with. And you can see because the townspeople themselves are rather apathetic, and they never really change. A couple characters, they have a change of heart, but the majority, they're still pretty easygoing about it. And that's a whole show. It's very easygoing. There's not a lot of stress or tense moments, which makes for a very relaxing and pleasant experience and lets you take in all these ideas that it presents and sort of like pick them apart and be like, do I agree with this? How do I feel about what it's saying? The problem is it's not throwing enough ideas at you. I think the show would have benefited from being much denser, and this show, for certain, I do not think needed to be 25 episodes at all. I don't feel like the show utilized the 25 episodes well or needed 25 episodes to tell its story. We could just cut out like the entire, because the show is so broken up into these individual arcs, and not all of them feel very necessary to the development of the characters. They're more so, it feels like just excuses to move the time along. It feels like some stuff is just there to move it along so that we can progress to a later point where we can have some developments. Particularly characters like the bratty little girl, I can't even remember her name. I couldn't stand her, and I kind of feel this way about most of PA Works' little child characters. I almost always hate them and find them super insufferable, and then they're always like sort of forced in the show and they get this big emotional arc, and I'm like, why do I care about this character? They're literally a child. They have not developed. And it's not like it's a show about them. If there was a show about a child, that would be kind of interesting, see them develop and see them go through things. That's why I love Usagi Drop so much, even though it's not really focused just on Rin. But when it's just like this little side one-off thing, it's like, why am I interested in this character who is immature and has never had any interesting ideas, especially when they're like really bratty and just mean for no reason? Then it's like, why should I ever feel bad for them? They're just a dumb kid, Maybe I'm being harsh, but that's really how I feel about these types of characters and shows. So it just feels like there's times where we're wasting time on stuff that's not the good part. Now, it might sound like I'm really ragging on the show, but that's not the case at all, because the characters, their interactions are really, really good. Though I would have liked some more development and some more backstory and just a more dense and compact show. Seeing the characters interact is one of the best parts, because they don't really fit into any stereotypes. For instance, Shiori, she seems like your stereotypical, sort of airheaded, dumb blonde type of character, where they never really have a full grasp on the situation. They usually are the ones making the mistakes. But really, that's more goes to the Yoshino, who's very just stupid, to be honest. She's often pretty dumb, but in a goofy way. She's very self-conscious, and even though she makes mistakes, she's often inspiring people, which is maybe a bit sappy, but the show is pretty sappy in a good way. And I like when shows can be sort of saccharine, and the interactions between the characters is where their personalities shine. And while I do, as I said before, I want more backstory and I want more development, I want to see more of the characters themselves interacting. What we get gives us such a good perception of their characters that we don't entirely need it. I already have a pretty good idea of what all these people are like. It's just I want to see either more of their past or more of their future. With this little vignette of their lives, it doesn't feel like it's enough to give me a satisfying arc of the character. It's more like we see the character, we get to know them a little bit, and then we have to say goodbye. Particularly with regards to Ririko, she sort of has an arc, but it's very subtle, and we don't get to know her very well, so that it feels like a big jump. We see her slowly becoming a little bit more open to people, but we didn't know very much of her before she was becoming more open when she was quiet. So it feels kind of awkward, the way everyone needs to have their moment, is what it feels like. The main cast, everyone has to have their thing, their change, their revelation, which leads to all of them feeling not as impactful as if the whole show was pointed at having one character have a big revelation, like, for instance, Hanasaku Iroha. Or in the case of Shirobako, all the characters are working towards the same goal, and their struggles are what differs, but they're all really working towards the same point, whereas all these characters are so different that I think it makes their interactions with each other are better because they're all so different and their personalities are so not alike and their interests are so different from each other, but that's what makes their personalities so enjoyable to watch interact with each other. But the downfall is that all their goals are different, and that makes when they are all sort of put together to work towards this goal for the town, it doesn't feel very, it feels slightly contrived, and it also doesn't feel as impactful because the town of Manoyama becoming a tourist zone isn't like the big goal, even though it's what the whole show revolves around. That's not really what everyone is working towards, and it's not what the townspeople really care about that much either. That's a bit of my, that's my biggest issue with the show, but the character interactions, as I said, really stand strong. Honestly, it feels so negative, but it's so much easier to point out the things that it did wrong because they really hold the show back from being like a 9 out of 10. If this was focused so much more specifically on the main five's interactions and on their goals, I definitely think it could have been like a strong 9 out of 10, 8.5 at least. But unfortunately, it's sort of held back by this setting and what it almost has to do. It has to fulfill this arc of the town of Manoyama, which is really the least interesting aspect of it. So that's my general thoughts on Sakura Quest. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Core Reviews if you're interested in hearing more of my thoughts, or you just have a question or want to hit me up. I use the service quite frequently, probably more than I should. I apologize about the general lack of videos, but been busy with college. Gonna try and record some more sort of talky videos like this so I can keep a consistent schedule going and, keep a dialogue with you all and keep growing my channel, though I will still do periodically the scripted, highly edited videos when I find the time. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.